Morning. This is the Assembly Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee of the Whole for April 15th, 2021, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Allard. Mr. Constant.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Presverdia. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Weddleton.
Here somewhere.
And Ms. Zalatel. You have a quorum. You're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So we have the agenda before us, and are there any additions anyone would like to propose? Hearing none at this time, we're going to discuss today recommendations from the Stormwater Utility Commission of changes to AMC 4.70.010 regarding the commission and its organizational structure. We also have a draft ordinance amending the code in response to the request by the commission. It's not introduced. We wanted to have an opportunity to talk about it here first. And so with that, I see that Mr. Schimsheimer is here. Is a member of the commission here as well, Mark?
This is Mark Corsentino, AUSGM. I'm not sure if we have a commission member or not present. I don't think we do, just looking at the list, but if someone is present, by all means, please let us know.
Mark, this is Christy Bischofberger. I wasn't able to get a commission member, but I'm here as staff representative who submitted this and can speak to it.
Okay.
Thank you. So Desiree, would you go ahead and put up the letter from the commission just briefly before we dive into the draft ordinance? So before us, we have a letter to us as the interested parties in the question. We asked the Stormwater Commission as one of their primary acts to review the section of code that we created so that we could have their direct input on their operation. And they wrote to us in a unanimous form that they would like us to attempt to amend the commission structure generally to make it more responsive, make it a little bit smaller, and make it a little bit less restrictive. Then they also asked us to help them be empowered to do the mission that we've set out before them. So Ms. Bischofberger, would you go ahead and give us your thoughts on the letter?
Yes, thank you. The group wanted there to be an odd number of commissioners so that in terms of taking a vote, it would be a little more straightforward. So that was the first request. And then the second request was based on the recognition that we're going to have a hard time always filling the exact spots that were called out in the original ordinance. So we built a little wiggle room into the structure of the wording so that we have like ideally what the members are and what we'll always shoot for. But if we fall short, we can still do business. And then beyond that, the only other change was to indicate that there would be multiple public meetings rather than a single public meeting.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you. And are there any questions from members? I do note that Mr. Weddleton put in the chat that he is here. Ms. LaFrance, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Bischofberger, for being here. And also thanks to the commission for these recommendations and their engagement, and very much appreciate the work they've done so far and the level of commitment. So thank you. I have a question on the distribution of representation. And just so I'm clear, the way that the changes are proposed, could it be then that one member would be able to provide representation in more than one category? Is that the thinking?
Yes, Ms. LaFrance, I think that is the thinking. In fact, we have that situation now where somebody represents the hillside and also happens to represent a commercial industry.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that, Mr. Weddleton, go ahead and let's keep questions on the exact language of the draft ordinance to the next part of the conversation. But Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, I guess I didn't read the draft ordinance yet. Which categories are hard to fill?
Well, what we found was that one of our commission members resigned, and that took one of our hillside positions away, but we still had one hillside position. And then, of course, right now we have a lawyer on the commission, but if that individual resigns, we might have a blank space for a bit. And we also have an engineer, but if that person resigns, we want to still be able to do business. So that's kind of the point of that. So in the case where we're missing the exact number in the current ordinance, I think the commission still wants to be able to feel like if they take a vote, it's legal.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. It's tricky.
Yep. So if there's no more general comments, yeah, let's go ahead and move over to the draft ordinance that is before us. Thank you. There are the whereas statements, and again, all of this is in draft format. Nothing is introduced, and nothing will be introduced until after we are through a brief process to figure out if we have alignment here. And before we dive in, I see Ms. Kennedy in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have kind of a general question as well, just in regard to the makeup and of the commission. And I understand, the challenges of trying to keep the right people and enough people on a board or a commission. A lot of our commissions struggle with that as well. But this is a really new commission. So I'm wondering do you believe that part of the challenge might be in the fact that people just aren't familiar with this yet, and there's just not enough people that are aware of the potential for actually being on this commission? Because I kind of hate to shut things down a bit if we're really just not up and running fully, just because people just haven't had a chance to really get to know that this commission exists. So just, general comment on that. Thanks.
Does someone from the administration wish to answer that?
This is Mark from AU. I think I'll make an attempt. If Jason is here, he can certainly step in. But we've been able to fill positions. It's just that when we do have a resignment, there's a gap, and it's generally a short gap. We've been able to fill positions thus far. I think in one of the other aspects, the hillside, the Section 6 area, that was a very specific area versus the broader hillside area. So there's a few nuances like that this serves to address too. And the big thing is getting it to an odd number so you can, if there's an even vote, you can still move forward. Well, you hope to avoid an even number, an even vote, so it wouldn't be split. But at a high level, Ms. Kennedy, I think we've been able to fill positions. There's just, in all our boards and commissions, I think we've run into that where when you do get a vacancy, it does take some time to just get them refilled. I think we've got interested positions, and Chris, you can certainly speak to that better than I can. But at a high level, I think thus far I've seen us be able to get folks on this without any problems. It's just the specific areas, that are smaller in size, maybe a little bit more challenging at times.
All right, thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Did you have anything further, Ms. Kennedy?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Right.
I don't, if somebody else did, I heard somebody else chime in, so I just wanted to let them speak if they were. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Was there anyone else to respond to that? Hearing none, Mr. Weddleton is in the queue.
Well, thanks. A couple of points. One is kind of specific to this. So we have kind of a commercial or industrial person who's represents ARDSA. It's almost a given if you're commercial or, well, I guess you can go wherever. You're probably going to be an ARDSA anyway. But then you have two members who are residents of ARDSA. Maybe that deals with so the other one who's a commercial industrial may not live in ARDSA. It just seems it could be a little redundant there, but I suppose that's not a huge issue. So, but I want to, if right now, if you go to the boards and commissions things, there's a huge amount of vacancies on boards and commissions. And is that lack of interest, just hard getting through, the process of having people appointed? Mark, you said that you were able to do it well, but it just seems like, I don't know, is it a slow process or is there some way we can speed it up?
I don't know if Mr. Bockenstead is here. It could be that Anna Henderson, who is here, could respond on behalf of the leadership. But I could answer that question to a degree. So please, if there's someone from the administration who wants to tackle the question of vacancies on broader boards.
Assemblymember Constant, this is Anna Henderson, Municipal Manager. Jason does usually handle the boards and commissions work, but just from my experience with MLNP and trying to find qualified individuals for the board, it is difficult to find people that are professionals, work long hours, and then come in and serve on our commission. So that's my contribution to the discussion. I'm happy to hear what you have to add.
Right. And so, Mr. Welton, I know that we have been assertively working through the lists and aiming to get people. It has been slow, but that comes and goes just depending on the tide of what the other business is that the 8th floor is working on, because this is all squarely under the administration and the code and the charter. And so effectively, the answer is it is more of a problem at certain times and less of a problem at certain times. And at this time, this commission has been able to fill its seats for the most part.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I think we could find people, certainly Hillsiders who are interested,
Yep.
So I don't want to, I just want to know it goes quickly once they're interested. Thanks.
Yep. And so, okay, I'm going to dive in for just a minute. And the issue of the odd versus even numbers and the ability to get a majority vote, to me, it's not the most important issue. I think that a majority is a majority, whether that's 6 or, if you have 9, it's 5. And so, but we spent a lot of time thinking these spaces through and what the criterion were for them. But we also asked the commission to do the work of performing the analysis and thinking their best way through the process to make this work for them. I would note that Ms. Allard has just arrived. And so from my perspective, I believe we should closely take the recommendation of the commission on how they would like to see it organized, because they have to do this work and it's not an insubstantial amount of work. And so from that perspective, I'd like us to walk through the proposed changes. So I don't know if Dean is here. This is pretty basic stuff. I could walk us through it, but it's often better to have someone who's dispassionate from the question kind of walk through the changes. Not seeing Dean, I'll just go ahead and dive in. So if you look at, section 1 right there, the proposal, their first proposed change is to make the commission 9 members, where previously it reads not less than 10, which means it could in fact be more. And then it proposes recommended changes to the membership criterion to say a member in good standing rather than 1 member shall be a member of the bar. And then it also says a registered professional engineer in Alaska. So they strike the requirement to have experience in utilities, and 1 member shall be. And I think that that shall be language it's pretty strong. And so I think it's it's fair. I do note for number 3, there's a spelling error, which we'll capture as we go forward from draft to final. And it says a hydrologist or other field related to stormwater management. I think that that's a fair argument to talk about. And then it says a representative of commercial or industrial customer in ARTSA, as opposed to the direct language of one member shall be. Then it says one member of a road service area board in each of the following areas. Instead of the word plus, they change it to or. Then they say 2 instead of 3 members shall be residents or who are residents of ARTSA. And then it says 2 members chosen at large. And I would guess some of that language, the shalls, are removed on behalf of Dean, who is the drafter. And so essentially, they're asking to soften the language of the required disciplines. They're asking to reduce the membership to 9. They're taking one of the members away from the ARTSA requirement. And those are the changes. So hi there, Dean is here now. So I don't know, Dean, if you want to add to anything that I said before we move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have anything to add. I think it's self-explanatory, and what I drafted was attempted to track precisely what the commission had recommended, so that we have this document for discussion going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. So are there questions or comments from the membership on these proposed changes at this time? I know that Ms. LaFrance had suggested in an email that she has some changes proposed to the whereas statements. Mr. Dunbar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just say, I mean, this is the first chance I've had to review this, and I appreciate what is being attempted here, and the restructuring to make things a little bit easier. But I am a little concerned about the reduction from 3 to 2 members of the ARSDA. You know, I think we had a lot of debate and discussion about that, but the ARSDA contains the vast majority of people in the municipality of Anchorage, including obviously all of East Anchorage, where I represent, and Midtown and downtown and a bunch of other places. And I am worried about tilting this this board further away from that. And I think there are real equity concerns there, considering where the tax burden is for bonds, and also where a lot of these projects are going to be, and just in general, that, you know, I think people want to have a voice on this. So I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about why we don't think this would take power or input away from what is by far the largest service area by population.
I'd be happy to respond, but I would love to hear from the utility or from the administration as well, if anyone has a perspective.
If you don't mind me jumping in, this is Christy Bischoff-Berger again.
Thank you.
We had to reduce it from somewhere, and since that was the greatest number, that is the reason we took it from there. We're flexible, however.
But I also think that something Christy said earlier too, and again, I can't, this is Mark from General Manager again. I don't want to speak on behalf of the commission and their mindset, but I think one of the things she said rang true with me is that some of these other positions, you know, the commercial member is also ARTSA, and you could maybe interpret that, you know, a lawyer and a professional engineer are going to work in a commercial ARTSA district as well. So that may be one of their thoughts, is that ARTSA should be fairly well represented as it is. But I'm not going to. That's a perspective and an opinion. It's not directly from the commission.
And anyone else? You know, there's one other category there that would make sense to make the reduction from, and that would be the at-large, which is number 7. it could achieve the same goal of reducing the numbers, but it would maintain the equity interest. Are there other thoughts on how we could work around this concern?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bakken said.
Yeah, if I could, just from the administration's perspective, I think you commented on where exactly I was going to go with it. That in many other boards and commissions, we actually don't have kind of at large. They're all dedicated. So to the extent that there is interest from the body to reduce the at large from 2 to 1 member and allow 3 members to be residents of Artsa still, from the administration's perspective, I think that is more than okay.
It appears Mr. Weddleton's in the queue.
Yeah, regarding the balance, I mean, if you knock down one person from Artsa, we've actually knocked down 2 from service areas, because number 5 just says a member of a road service area in one of the following areas. So and what we had before was you would have 1 from Hillside, 1 from Campbell Airstrip Limited Road Service Area. I'm sorry, there's 2. So but there's 2, now we're down to 1. So it's possible there would be 1 person who understands how road service areas work. And
5.
Right? I mean, that's number 5. So we had initially, I mean, as it stands now, 1 from the Hillside and then 1 from Camel Airstrip Road area. And this way you could just have 1. And it's kind of risky. I mean, I know this thing we're going to be voting on projects and all that kind of stuff. But key thing is, how do you set this thing up? And you really want to make sure you have people understand steep slopes and road service areas and how they work. And we're getting here where we have 1 potentially who would know that.
So, following the spirit of, or I guess, is there anyone else who'd like to comment first? Okay, now following the spirit of the previous discussion, then it might make sense for us to just do away with both of the at-large seats. That's at least an alternative, right? So then we would maintain the 2, 1 from each of the service areas, and then also the 3 members from Artsa. Mr. Dunbar?
Yeah, I might support that. I would just say that I think that I would guess, and someone from the board or from the commission or from the administration could correct me, but I would imagine that would make it harder to fill, though, right? I mean, the at-large folks, the great thing about that is that there's a lot of flexibility there. You can get them from anywhere. And so I guess I just want to make sure that we're not making it too difficult for them to fill all the needed seats. But I do think that is a potential solution. But it might run counter to the intention of the ordinance. So I'd like to hear from the folks involved.
That would be you, Ms. Bishop-Berger, I think.
Yes, I think it was the purpose of simplifying, to keep the at-large, and it could happen that both of the at-large members end up being from the Hillside. So when the commission worded this, they were keeping the flexibility of one from the road service area, 2 from the Artsa, and then the others from wherever people happen to be interested. So that was why it got worded the way it did in proposal. But the commission will accept whatever this committee decides is best.
And that Mr. Weddleton is in the queue. Did you have any follow-up to that for us?
No, I mean, I guess I just say I think it is difficult. And I think, drainage issues have been top of mind for folks at the Hillside, I know, and in Section 6. But I am concerned that, if there are 2 ARSA members and then there are the 2 members at large that are also from that area, and then it's true the hydrologist and those folks might work downtown, but I think there's a decent chance that they'll live in those areas too. I just am a little concerned that we might end up setting up a commission that is tilted very heavily against the ARSDA, you know, where we have, and I get it, like, the more people are going to be interested from those areas, but you know, I just think again that it really does bring forward a lot of equity concerns.
Okay, Mr. Weddleton.
Oh, thanks. Just a question for staff. Is there, have you, you know, the Campbell Airstrip, Rose Service area, you're talking relatively few people. Have you been able to fill seats from there? Or fill
The
that
current
one seat?
seat is filled. The current seat is filled by that area.
Okay, do you think it's, I mean, if it were left like it is, would it be hard to get someone from there to fill the seat?
Potentially. I mean, it's a small area compared to the larger hillside.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, all right, thanks.
Boy, and it certainly does raise that equity question high if you have a very small area with a representation at that level, but it's interesting. Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we have been discussing the difficulty of filling positions on commissions and boards, but one question I had concerns the number, and also recognizing that an odd number may be preferable for commission members. At one point, there was some discussion about adding an 11th member, and I'm not trying to muddy things up, but I was wondering if Ms. Bishopsberger could address that piece, if the commission, you know, talked about adding an 11th member, and if it just, you know, comes back to it being challenging, you know, to fill 9 positions, even if with an 11th, maybe it would be a more, you know, at-large general position. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. At the time 9 was chosen, we had 8 people. So I think they were worried about even, you know, at the time we didn't have 10, we had 8. So we thought we'd be doing good to get 9. So 11 really wasn't talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just going to say that the Campbell Airstrip Road area has got a very active road board. There's been people that have been serving on that board for 20, 30, 35 years or over. And so I don't think they're going to have a real difficult time finding someone that's been on that board to serve in one of these positions on this committee or this commission. Thank you.
I would ask Mr. Bockenstead if you don't mind talking about the 11 versus 10 versus 9.
Certainly. I think from just a general perspective, most boards and commissions, I think, prefer to have an odd number simply for voting purposes. I don't think that would be something that is all that strange. But we have a whole bunch of different boards and commissions, and they're all different sizes. I think our fewest or smallest board and commission is 5 members. And I think our largest goes up to 13, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it really depends on, do we think this gets at the heart of the issues that we are trying to address in terms of gaining the input from different parts of the community? Certainly, 9, based on all of the discussions that we've had about this particular commission over the years, 9 seems like it does that, but, I don't think that there would necessarily be a huge problem or issue potentially with finding an additional 2 people if the body ultimately decided they wanted this commission to have 11 members.
Okay, thank you. And if you look at the original language, it says no less than 10. And so we clearly contemplated the possibility of a larger board. And we wrestled over the makeup of the board at the smaller numbers or at the current number because of that equity concern. Are there other inputs from folks?
This is Mark from Mayu again. One thing to consider with respect to boards and commissions is consider the future fate of whether or not we continue to do these in a tele fashion via Teams. One thing I've noticed at least on our other board is we certainly have got better participation with being able to do these remotely. When you do them in person, the larger the number, the more the more difficult it becomes to get full participation. So that that will be something we'll have to navigate if you do consider a larger number.
So I am interested in some direction from members of the committee. Because the next step for us will be to take commentary from the committee and move it into a final draft version for introduction. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my preference would be, and we don't often do this, but I think the commission has shown a lot of initiative in putting together their own ordinance here, working with the admin. And I guess I would recommend that the committee not make a recommendation and that it goes to the floor and we just sort of have a debate and we perhaps put up some amendments. And we do it that way. And, you know, it might be that in the interim, one or more of us will decide that this is an acceptable form to go in. But I guess I would prefer that rather than trying to reach an agreement at this committee and making some committee recommendation.
Mr. Weddleton.
Well, actually, I suppose what Forrest said probably makes sense, but in broad view, we have two very different viewpoints on this thing. One is we're going to vote on projects and Hillside would dominate and only have Hillside things, and that would be unfair and inequitable and this and that. Maybe that's something. But the reality is this is setting up this huge thing, and it needs to really have people. Ours is fairly well known by the city and the staff and where the pipes are and how it works. But the Hillside is not as well known by anyone, except for the people in road service areas. But it's been a project. It's all going to be brand new up there. And so it's just critical to have people understand how things work up there from a knowledge base. And I'm just worried that this can knock it down to one person who knows how road service areas work. And that's very risky. And I'm sure the hegemony of the Hillside dominating everything on the city will continue should we have one extra. Not, but it's just very risky. You'll have potentially one person who knows that, and it's just so very different from ARDSA that I'd hate to lose that. It would be bad for the city. It would be bad for this project if we, have people only know ARDSA and think in that mindset, doing things, for steep slope and big lot, natural area, semi-urban, but anyway, it's risky. So, and I'm just not focusing on this. We're voting on projects. I think that'll shake out just fine, but we need to have it set up sensibly. Thanks.
I would just say that I agree with pretty much everything you said, except that invisible hidden knot that you put in the middle there. So that was me attempting weakly to be humorous. In a message that I received from Mr. Gates, he posited that there are 7 members on the AWW and Solid Waste Services Committee, but the Watershed and Natural Resource Advisory Commission has 9. And so the number is somewhat within the context of kind of our traditional methods and history. John, I guess my question for you would be, are you comfortable coming up with a proposed amendment, or should we kind of work through this a little bit more, maybe even in a small working group?
Well, I think my gut thing now is somehow make sure we have 2 people who are road service areas. And I'm not sure. I mean, if it's okay, if it's easy to fill someone from Campbell Airstrip road service area, that's fine. But I would leave that section 5 alone. And then what do we do about odd members? I don't you know, you can make it one member at large or something like that, balance that out.
Are other members kind of leaning in a direction here? Okay, so Ms. LaFrance, I'm going to call on you now, if you don't mind, to go over your discussion about potential amendments to the whereas statements.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just, when I mentioned that, was intending to just add a little bit more detail. I think the letter at the top, I'll have to pull it up here, was referenced, and I was going to add, you know, the dates and just that background information. So nothing, nothing big, but just some small detail.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure to have that input before we submit a final draft to the on-base system.
Thanks.
Mark, are you trying to speak? Your microphone keeps showing me you are.
One real quick, just insight to, it doesn't change anything anyone has said thus far, but just a little bit more insight that you may not know because it's going through the planning process or the project plan right now with the commission. But one of the things that this contract will do is set up a stormwater utility policy group to make sure that, you know, utility policies and such with the different entities are represented. And that policy group does include DOT, MOA, and it also includes the LURSA and RURSA municipal representative, which is Maury Robinson. And so there will be some knowledge. Now, it's not part of the commission and the voting member, but it nevertheless is insight and input that we'll make sure gets addressed. Again, it doesn't take away from the fact that you said it's true. I just want to make sure you do have that information if it matters at all.
All right, and that's helpful. Thank you. So my kind of summary takeaway from this is folks from the road surface areas don't want to lose a seat, and folks from the ARDSA areas don't want to lose a seat, and the commission wants to reduce by 1 seat, and that's the thing we have to square before we finalize this project. Is that a fair summary? Any objection to that characterization?
It sounds fair. And I think we get there easily just by making one at large seat.
Mr. Dunbar, is that a fair characterization of the conversation?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so now the working group that's on the draft of this ordinance, myself, Ms. LaFrance, Dean Gates, will take those points into consideration as we come up with a final draft, and I anticipate this will be in queue maybe as early as Friday. Anything else on the topic? For my part, Ms. Bischofsberger, I would ask you to communicate back to the commission that we're very grateful for. Oh wait, there's one more change actually. Sorry, on the back page, it's conduct of public hearings. It's currently the code reads conduct a public hearing, report, and make recommendations to the mayor. They want to amend it to be conduct public hearings. We have to remove the word a there after conduct in order for it to be grammatically correct, but they want to change it to hearings. Is there any objection to the idea of allowing the commission to do more than 1 hearing? Okay, I wouldn't think there would be. So with that, again, Ms. Bischofberger, please communicate my gratitude to the commission for their hard work sorting through this question, and soon we'll have a response.
I will do that, and our thanks to this committee for considering these changes. Appreciate it.
All right, so next on the agenda is any other business, nothing that's actually published on the agenda, and then we just can essentially say we had our stormwater update. Are there any additions to legislative priorities we want to discuss at this time from any member or staff and administration? Are there any budget items to contemplate? There's one item that's not on the agenda, and I don't want to talk about it today really, but I wanted to make sure people hear that we are paying attention, and that is proposals coming forward to support shortfalls in the Anchorage Community Development Authority, which does fall under the purview of the Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee. But at this point, there's no prepared presentation. And so I just want people to know that. And I now see Ms. LaFrance in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, if you don't mind, could we go back to the stormwater utility update?
Sure.
I would like to ask the administration or Ms. Bischofsberger, if she's still on an update on the Stantec contract. And I understand actually that the project manager may be on the call as well. So perhaps Mr. One of the Marks could respond.
Sure. And Chris, if you want to say something, by all means, go for it. But what I'll say is that the contract is executed. There's about 13 tasks on the contract, and we've gotten through the first task, which is task 0 actually, because it was kind of a reassessment of the overall changes because of COVID, and then making sure there's a project plan and budget and schedule in place, which has been done. And that is right now being submitted to the Stormwater Utility Commission to review and provide comment on, and before we start the next processes, which is really going to be public outreach, the public outreach plan.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Ms. LaFrance?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Great. So, and then again, strolling back down to budget items. Any proposed budget items at this time? No. As I mentioned, definitely paying attention to the conversation about Anchorage Community Development Authority. And for my part, it's important to recognize the nexus in the downtown of ACDA and transit. And we'll likely be hearing much more about that conversation in the near future. Finally, we have audience participation. Anyone wish to be heard? *6 if you're on the phone.
This is Jimmy Haberman. All I'm going to say is just make for the record, I listened to your meeting and thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Haberman's recognized. Thank you. And anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.